Hello, everyone. Happy non-farm payrolls Friday. How's everyone doing today? Good morning, John. Good morning, Kevin from Lakeland. Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Jacob. Good morning, Heinrich. Happy Friday to you, David. Good morning, Martinez. Good morning to people hiding in the background and still filtering in. It is a Friday. There we go, Pavneet. Earlier, what is this? Earlier we could know Dems were the ones damaging Teslas going forward. We won't know. Well, Tesla had the head and shoulders. Definitely sold off yesterday. Good morning, Bull Strike. Again, I was watching for the rollover play between the 50 and 62.5, which we definitely got. Now on the secondary bounce, I'm still watching for rollover plays. Good morning, McRangers. Good morning, Tony. Again, thank you for tuning in. All right, but the bigger news this morning, we had non-farm payrolls. Are there any farm jobs left? No, it should just be called payrolls. It should just be called payrolls. Good morning, MJ. Good morning, Sterling. Hope your vacation is going well. What else? So in the payrolls report, consensus 130 coming in 139, down from prior 147. Now the last 2 months were also revised lower, so we're still in that. Put out a good number and revise it lower. Unemployment rate holding at 4.2. Now this is sort of big. Average hourly earnings month over month coming in at 0.4 versus 0.3 and up from 0.2, and that is inflationary. So that's got to keep, the Fed's going to keep an eye on that. Participation rate dropping a little bit. Weekly hours in line with prior and consensus, and then you have all the sub numbers. U6 is also in line with prior. We have Bowman speaking. And that's really about it. Yeah, the rig counts for crude traders, but it's a very quiet day now. It's a very quiet day. Remember next week we have the CPI numbers coming out. Just something to think about in the back of your mind. Going into the open, it's buy everything except for Broadcom, which did beat, but the guidance was not as good. It'll probably bounce back up today. That's really about it. After the non-farm payrolls came out, it was buy everything. I don't know why they're being celebrated so much, but we're still in that mode of buy everything in the markets. Good morning, Royal Palms. Yes, there you go. Full-time workers down, part-time workers up. Hey, did I say good morning to Harold? Who did I miss? MJ, good morning. Anissa, good morning. Hello, Charles. I find it strange that so many companies have run up based off their relationship with NVIDIA, yet NVIDIA cannot seem to get anywhere near its all-time high. Also remember, from a pure, we are getting beats, but these companies are already insanely valued. You got to keep that in mind too. And at some point, thank you, Bull Strike. What are the thoughts on NVIDIA? We can look at that. Only 1K lost in government jobs. We'll see. I mean, I take everything with a grain of salt. All right, we have everything up today. Real estate's flat, but everything else is up. Everything's up. Consumer cyclical. It's definitely a buy everything. I want to see how it reacts after the open, though. I'm really curious to see if we get any sell. No, it doesn't mean the market has to turn negative, but I want to see if this follows through into the open because it wasn't that strong a report. And with the prior revisions, it was just a gut buy everything. And we're still having retail buy everything. Well, we still have now at the 99%, remember, Fed meeting, not next week. It's the Wednesday after next. But it's at 99% for a full. They're not doing anything. And July is up to 85.5%. Still a cut in September. Fear and greed, still in greed mode. Schiller PE to mid-36s. Nothing in terms of earnings yesterday. Lulu down big. Did beat, but their guidance was lower. DocuSign was down. Broadcom was down. So everything that beat, but these DocuSign and Lulu were down the biggest. Broadcom will probably get bought on the open. So Palantir confirmed a daily double top yesterday. We'll get to that also. So here was your little Here was your little non-farm payrolls move. We're trading right at the 59.74 area still from yesterday. I moved this level down based off of that, and this was a lopsided double, by the way. Right here, lopsided double. Still counts. And so we're not at the final target yet. But remember, up here, yeah, we've been slowly grinding, sort of consolidated, grinding higher. But we're into a major resistance zone still, with daily cycles still rolling over and weekly still trying to roll over. So maybe we get a few more days of this in the CPI. Still, the trend is up. The only warning sign for me on the bigger picture is if we close below the rotation zone, which is back at 58.80 approximately. And that does not trigger this double, by the way. That's just an early warning sign. Until that dips, every dip in the rotation zone is getting bought. Everything's still getting bought. I'm keeping an eye on yesterday's high, the range between yesterday's high and a continued rally, this 6,016.50 to then 6,023 as very key resistance on a continued rally today. But I want to see, again, how it opens with any selling pressure going into the open. Again, the next level beyond there is 60.52. The NASDAQ, which this was not. Oh, yes, it was. Sorry, I meant one of them wasn't, but that was technically a double. Still, going from the conservative targets, that's why I had to double check. You still have your upside targets if it continues on the rally, 21.803, 21.846 are the continued targets back up. All right, bigger picture though, the key level I'm watching, if we did break below this 21.455, key is still bottom rotation zone about 21.170. And I'll keep climbing closer to 21.200. Still, if we blow through it, yesterday's high, this was a pretty big sign. I also want to see if we get more Trump-Musk feuding today. That was sort of funny. That was some of the most entertainment there's been in a while. So that's where we sit there. Again, it's a Friday. Dow still, we're just trading slightly higher. We're not even trading higher since the mid-May. Since the day after my birthday, we're trading virtually at that level. So we've got a whole nearly 3 weeks, and a whole lot of nowhere, little up, little down. Again, massive consolidation. Yeah, we're grinding higher. Going to be watching. There's very significant resistance right up here around this 42,750. So going to be paying attention to that going in the open. Russell trying to break out. Remember, I'm taking this head and shoulders. It can trigger, but would really be watching still. The key level is 2,190. 2,190 breakout play. VIX trying to even break down below 17s. Market's getting exceedingly complacent. Again, I was watching for volatility plays. Sorry. Volatility plays, and it went the other way. So no increase in volatility just yet. DAX just somewhat grinding. A lot of this is just grinding higher into very complacent. So there's going to be some tipping point, and it's still shrugging off now with non-farm payrolls. Again, weren't that strong, but shrugging off the whole feud yesterday. Notes breaking back down in yields after triggering the inverse head and shoulders, climbing and back to that key level. This is going to be very interesting. Very interesting. Because based off that hourly average earnings, that is somewhat inflationary. That was a very strong print. Okay, and the yields reacting to it on the 10-year and the 30-year also after triggering the head and shoulders is climbing back up. But still, key is that closer to that 5%. Dollar index Really watching for that base. By the way, there was a little mini double bottom, but this spike down yesterday took it off the table. So now I'm just watching right here. We don't have a clear path move until you get above 99, roughly 99. But in the short term today, I'm watching how it reacts to this 98.83 on any bounce. Crude still holding up there, building a really nice higher base. So holding up here, this looks like it's trying to break out with the rising rotation zone. Again, there's only rig counts today, but I'll be paying close attention to this Sunday night and Monday next week. And CPI also next week. Gold, still holding. Still holding. We do have a little mini potential double top that's not been invalidated yet. That's the only thing for a pullback. So, and I would not be shorting this aggressively. I'd be looking for, if it did trigger, for potential buying opportunities at those little levels. And before I'm asked, is this a little mini double bottom? There you go. So as long as the first and second targets are within the candle bodies that started it, yes, it is. So that's something, unless it's invalidated, which you need to move up and then another rotation back down. 3398.3 is a little mini play, and that's only you see here. That's only to potentially take it up to invalidate this double top, the potential double top. But again, we're still above the 62.5, so I'm still watching for a reconnect with the 87.5. Silver climbing to the next harmonic, 36.49. Where are we trading right now? 36.50. So we've checked off that harmonic. On a continued move higher, roughly 37.50. Copper's interesting. Copper hit the 75% harmonic, got sold down. Really, there's still selling pressure up here, but watching for moves higher in copper still because of the probabilities. What else do we have? I'll get to some of this other stuff in a second. Keeping an eye. This is another one I'm keeping an eye on here. This is not a double bottom because it's a spike high, but if the yen can start getting above about 145 again, going to be paying close attention to that for a continued upside move. The euro, I'm paying attention to if we start breaking below over the next week, over the bottom of the rotation zone, but nothing today. The Spideys, trading 598.35. On any rollover, we have yesterday's open at 597.63 is key. On a continued rally, 653 takes off the potential double. The Qs, again, remember there is no potential double. Right now, gap up from yesterday's close, 529.44. Pay attention to, on any rally, still we're below yesterday's open at 530.18, and then it would be yesterday's high, 533.05. Any rollover play would be to the gap fill. All right, Bitcoin, interesting. Another one that's interesting. By the way, I did move the targets because I wanted to see if we reached the full target now. I had them on conservative. I went to aggressive, and we did reach the full target for the aggressive side. And we also triggered a bigger head and shoulders. So, still, based off of that, I'll be looking for some more rollover plays, at least in the short term in Bitcoin. Okay? And especially if we start getting selling pressure next week in the NASDAQ. I'll be really looking for this. But that's where roughly you're looking at for if it does continue down. Where does that put it in the bigger picture? I'd really be looking at the first and second targets in that because of where the weekly rotation zone is. And still it's holding against very, very major support right here. On a weekly basis, we dipped in the weekly rotation zone, and this is a lower probability head and shoulders. That's why I will still watch for rollover plays, but I am patient All right, Tesla, which gap up today after the Tesla disaster. Remember, we had the head and shoulders done. Based off the gap down, had to be a momentum play. We did not close below the 62.5 here of this. Here's something else. Oh, I deleted the wrong one. Shoot. If I could hit the right buttons. All right, see these green lines? Those are the retracements from the lows in April up to the highs at the end of May. We did not close below the 62.5. I am still watching for rollover plays because we're going to get the first cross the rotation zone. We filled those a couple gaps, actually closing right at a gap yesterday and filling even more gaps down. But I will continue to watch for rollover plays in Tesla and then eventually see if we have to close below this 271.80 level. That's going to be key for me. NVIDIA. In the bigger picture, not yet tacking off the 87.5, still a magnet price up there. We do have a potential double top. See where we also have a cluster. Look at that 12.5% cluster, right around that 144 area. Just above 144, but 146.13 takes that off the table. Other than that, this is a valid double. Might never trigger because the trend is still up. It is against the daily rotation zone. Okay? But if you're looking for the bigger picture, in the key areas I'd be watching is 144.13, and then there is a significant level right here. All right? There's a significant level at just above 148, closer to 148.50. You see all this back and forth action right there. The gap up right here to that level, the gap reversal to that level. So that is a very key level to pay attention to if it continues to rally and invalidates the double. Would I be doing anything from the short side yet? No. And not unless the double top does trigger. Broadcom, little gap down to the rotation zone, but nothing major. Broadcom still, with their earnings and guidance, Broadcom's trading at 125. It's going to drop a little based off their last earnings, but this thing's in nosebleed territory, and their earnings aren't growing that fast to justify it. But again, you'll still have dip buyers come in. Palantir coming here. 119.41 was key. We traded to 118.93 but closed at 119.91. So the double is confirmed but not triggered. It has not been triggered. It's still, if it's going to trigger, has to close below 119.41, which it did not do yesterday. So, and I bet everybody knows where a stop is for me on a closing basis for Palantir. So, that's where we sit. Now, if this rotates back up, it could invalidate the double. Okay, but in order to invalidate this double, which has not triggered yet, I'll stress again, because this market is still, it's still buy everything. 129.33 invalidates the double. Close beyond there. All right. Again, just watch the daily double on that, Richard. When I have a chance, could you please look at HYG and JNK? There's been an unusually high amount of put buying in August and September for those two. The high yield put. I have not looked at the options in that, so I cannot comment on that, but I trust you're providing correct information. Let me just see the weekly. That is still a weekly double top. So if you're looking on the short side of that, that is a valid weekly double. That's the only thing that's negative. Otherwise, it's back in the consolidation. J and K. I mean, the dailies are almost shot, but the weekly, that is still a potential weekly in both those. But I would not be doing anything to short side unless those triggered. Would not be doing anything. Now, if those triggered, it could get real interesting. Just curious to see here. Because here's another reason I would not do anything. Again, we're back above the 62.5. We've stalled out roughly at the 75% and the declining 200. But if this pops through there, you could easily see closer to 97 again. Can I explain why the spike down invalidated the double? Sure. Because it went through 97.946. It went through 97.946 right there. That invalidated the double. Which means I can't use double targets. Which also means here's another key. Why I'm watching here is because this is the level that starts getting into the clear path. But that's why the double was invalidated. Please check. Again, I'm still watching for bullish play. We pulled back to the breakout zone again and still holding. We ran up. My targets on the break were, again, the 75%, and the next target which was 503 and then 520. We already hit the first target, which was a stop raise. Now I'm watching for a retest of that area. In the short term, though, on HG1, my short term on the bounce, we have to get above 498 again. So I'm paying real close attention. 495 to 496 roughly. That's going to be very key resistance on the secondary bounce right there. What else? Yeah, patterns. That's why I don't care about the news. A lot of times you'll see things set up, and then the news will, and people say, well, that triggered. Well, the patterns were already there. Maybe the news just triggered the execution of the pattern. Tesla next year, well, it might face it this year. All right, let's see. Any weird chance to see a haphazard head and shoulders on sending it to the graveyard? Tesla on the... Then I have to run into the open. Is this a head and shoulders? No. Why? Because it's not reversed. It's forming here. Now, you start breaking back down below this key area right here. The 214, you don't even need a head and shoulders. You start breaking below there. Remember, Tesla, even from an evaluation point, PDE 182 with declining sales worldwide, except for what was it, Norway? And you know, their self-driving stuff, it's going to get interesting. But the key level I'm watching the short term is the 62.5, this 271 area. Can you mail me a question? You can email me a question, pathtradingpartners@gmail.com. Palantir more of a short or a pullback entry? Palantir, still, why I'm cautious on this is we're running out on a weekly basis. We're running out of momentum. So it could be an aggressive short into the rotation zone, but I'd only trade it with options. Okay, and it has not triggered yet. Okay? And that's not for a huge crash. Remember, that's a trade into the weekly rotation zone. Then I'll be paying attention to the bigger secondary reaction because at some point, Palantir is still trading 567 PDE. Come on. It's got to grow massively. And that's after its latest earnings, which, no, this thing will be. So, oh, you didn't. Both copper and silver are historically cheap. Yes, both copper and silver are historically cheap versus gold, and maybe we can look at that next week. All right, I got to run into the open. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful trading day. Don't do anything silly on a Friday. And I'll see you all back next week. Bye for now.